Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It's the week of November 7th, the 32nd week in Ordinary Time. And Ann, the holiday season is here, whether we like it or not. There is Christmas candy in the grocery stores. Christmas carols are playing on the radio. Some love it. Some are fighting for Thanksgiving's equal rights. I am just coming off of my candy corn sugar high and thinking ahead to planned holiday meals. So starting off that way, Ann, how are you?
Wow, Haley, you kind of summarized so many of my thoughts already. It's true. We can talk about the fight. I used to fight the good fight, but I don't know. I'm going to embrace the red and green sooner than I have in the past. But today we'll also talk about All Souls Day. As one of my former colleagues said, November is the month of saints and thanks. So I thought that was kind of a fun way to think about what we'll be talking about today. We'll just talk a little bit about some things that are going on in your home that bring some newness and maybe some normality or lack of normality. I'll be talking about some events, the conclusion of the golf season, and we'll be talking about today's gospel reading from Mark. Yeah. So share it with us, Haley. First of all, I have to admit, the candy corn costume might be one of the best things I've ever seen. I said, never in a million years would I have known there would be a costume known as sexy candy corn. And I think that was one of the better laughs. And I posted it on my personal Instagram, like kind of the story we talked about on the air, like no sexy teacher, no sexy librarian, no sexy cop. People really ran with that one, by the way. They added to my list. I had no idea of the things that young people, teenagers, young adults show up. Oh, sexy kitten was another one. But I said, never in a million years would I ever have thought that I would have to include sexy candy corn as one of the costumes. And people were like, that is so funny. And I said, that was so organic. That was from our show because of your love. But, I love candy corn, but I'm going to give you the candy corn crown. Maybe a crown of candy corn is really,
well, it wouldn't last long. It wouldn't last long in my house because I would eat it. But I have to, true confessions, as wacky as that costume might be, if I was 25 years younger, I would have been in it. So
yeah. You probably would have looked great. To be honest, it's kind of cute. That's like the weird thing.
Yeah,
it's just,
it is cute.
I never really thought that candy corn could be a costume. So just, creativity don't ever underestimate the power of creativity.
Yep. No, definitely not. Well, and I'm going to have to use that at some point. I love the idea of November being the month of saints and thanks. Yeah, that's kind of a fun one. And, we talked last week about this past week being, All Souls Day and my sort of study and awareness of the saints. I think I'm going to call it more of an awareness. I don't know how much I've been studying them, but I've definitely been.
Yes, you sound so erudite when you say that.
Right,
yes.
Right. So I'm going to say my awareness of it. But, it was really interesting for me. I've attended Mass on All Souls Day before. It's something obviously I know and I'm aware of. I love, the tradition I spoke of last week at my high school, Xavier College Prep, in honoring, loved ones who have passed. But this was really the first year where I've paid attention to, perhaps the true meaning behind All Souls Day, honoring those who have died and passed before us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has a lot to do with just, what's going on in my personal life. Certainly I lost my coach, Tim Welsh earlier this year. His wife, as we mentioned last week, really takes an interest in the All Souls Day. In fact, the cover photo from our podcast last week was from her home. And then, also the teacher we had who passed at my high school or the school where I work at, I was very aware of people recently who had died.
Wow.
A friend of mine had just lost her husband about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So to think of All Souls Day, your All Saints Day in that context of really reflecting on and honoring those who have gone before us, was kind of a neat way to look at the holiday. It was a time to reflect on everything we've learned from people who have passed, and, you know, the love that stays with us, the way we honor them, who they are. So it was kind of a neat day for me in that sense, because I think I probably thought about it more than I normally did,
Yeah.
and tried to give true meaning to what the actual, you know, mass and day is for. So
Yeah.
for me, that was kind of a neat exercise,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me
But,
this
one
week.
thought in response to that, Haley, so, November being a month to remember the dead and like the saints, I was thinking recently, we kind of talked about this last week with, it wasn't a holy day of obligation, but it was still a holy day. And I was thinking about kind of Catholic culture and the way that we practice our faith and, the traditions and the culture of being a Catholic. And I thought, this is not one that I want to let go of. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so meaningful. And just like you talking about what that means, and how in your own life, it will take on new, you know, chapters and, feeling from year to year, but just that we have saints. And, I know some Catholics who've said, I don't like that we have saints. That does not resonate with my spirituality. I don't, there are, I've read areas of criticism that we could, and I don't want to get sidetracked on it, but I think it's personally, I do believe it's a treasure in the spiritual life of the Catholic Church. So I love it. And I really want to keep it. October is Respect Life Month. And unfortunately, that the issues with Respect Life, it's not just abortion, but it's, respecting
Right.
all life. But obviously, protecting the unborn is a significant part of it. And I love that too, or the month of the rosary, but it feels like that one's maybe a little bit, I don't know, not as celebrated. But I'm also in a high school, so it's very different when you're in a primary school kind of community. But I love this theme, and we'll be moving into Advent next week. But just a small story from our conversation about the ofrenda that you put Jackie's picture, the ofrenda that she, it looks like, is that in her home?
It's in her
Where
home.
she
Yeah.
created that, yeah, and Coach Welsh's pictures in the middle of it. So my team played, in Central Coast Section Championships in Monterey. And on Tuesday, when I was driving back, there's a large Latino community in Monterey. There's a lot of migrant workers, for example, and farming area. And so there's a lot of times where you'll see fruit stands or, people selling wares on the side of the road. But on Tuesday, everybody was selling marigolds. And I had learned through our school video that is the particular flower that you include in an ofrenda. And I understood. I was like, oh my gosh, now I understand. Like everywhere. I mean, it was not in one road stop. It was in probably 8 of them. So I got to share that with my students, and I said, I learned something here. So I knew what that was about.
Yeah,
So,
that's interesting. That's interesting.
yeah.
So the rest of my week after that, kind of that neat, poignant opening, we are in ordinary time. Sometimes I think we put ordinary time on this time of the liturgical year because there's nothing else to call it. There's really nothing else kind of going on. But, life is ordinary sometimes. And I think that's a challenge, and an opportunity for so many people, because a lot of, for most of us, most days can be very mundane. You get up, you go to work, or you get up and take care of your family, or you got up and go to school, whatever it is. And you go through the day and you get up and you do it again the next day. So ordinary, doesn't always have to be boring or rote. But it is what it is. And that's kind of how my week was. Water polo is over for us. My husband started a new job, where he is working out of the home for the first time in 15 years.
Wow.
That's a big shift. It's a big shift for my dogs who, at age 11 and 4 have never had all of us gone all day. So it was an ordinary week for us. We went to work, we went to school, we planned dinners. I will say we are doing a lot more planning than we used to do. I think that's probably a familiar task with most people. But there's joy in that too. There's joy in kind of cutting back to being the simplicity of life. What are we going to eat today? What are we going to do? What do we want to talk about? I think we have to stop and pause and enjoy those moments as well. So that was kind of, my week in a nutshell. It was, just kind of transitioning out of fall into this holiday season.
It's here.
It is here. Looking forward to it. Fighting the urge to turn on the I think they call it holiday carols or cheer. I'm not really sure what the actual Sirius radio station is called. Holiday,
I
maybe.
have to admit, I did yesterday. I'm
Yeah.
not even gonna lie. I turned it off, but I did go there for a minute. So
So you won't hear any criticism from me. It does not
yeah,
bother me. I'm just not ready for it. My
yeah,
husband is. He
yeah.
probably would have started listening 6 months ago. But
Well, I watched a Hallmark Christmas movie,
huh.
and it does feel a little bit premature. So, I was watching that on November 6th. I had given myself a hard deadline of the 15th because last year I waited till after Thanksgiving, and I actually regretted that I waited so long. So I said, okay, let's do 1/5. And no, I broke the seal. I was really tired, and I was like, I want to watch this. And I did enjoy it, but I think, I don't know, part of me is like that delayed gratification, there
Yeah.
would be some more joy, and I don't know.
Ha.
But yeah, it's interesting because my week was very different than ordinary time, Haley, because my team completed our season. We competed, like I said, in Monterey. We took 5th place. Our goal was to finish 3rd because we would be playing tomorrow. We played well, but not well enough. The other teams played that beat us. One team did, amazing. So it came to a conclusion. We were together. I said a few words, and I said to the girls, anyone want to add? And they were just like, thanks for a great season, and they were grateful. And we hugged as a group hug, and it was good. It was a good way to end it, but that came to a conclusion. Baseball had come to a conclusion the night before, when the Braves defeated the Astros. So it was kind of like this, all these endings as a baseball fan,
Yeah.
and then Buster Posey, the all-star catcher for the Giants, announced his retirement at the age of 34. He's been a Giant his whole career for 12 years. And, he's just a great role model. For young kids. He, has twins, and then he didn't play last year because he and his wife adopted another set of twins. He's from rural Georgia. I think they're moving back there, but he's just been a mainstay, a constant. The catcher is really, your older son played baseball, so
Right.
their role. Someone's like, they're like the quarterback. And I said, yeah, but they're also not like the quarterback because they don't get the credit the quarterback gets, right? So
Right.
it's a loss, but people are happy for him. But there's just been great stories and great memories. And yeah, so it was a week of conclusions,
Yeah.
but, moving ahead to this holiday season.
All right. Well, you earned that Hallmark movie then, because that's you needed that. You needed that in your life after those endings.
Tell me
for
about
sure.
it.
But
yeah.
speaking of role models, I would be remiss to not at least acknowledge my hands down favorite football game of the year, the Notre Dame Navy game yesterday. Of course, I live in Annapolis. We were long time Navy season ticket holders. My kids grew up going to Navy games. I was thinking of my son yesterday. This was his first Notre Dame Navy game as a Notre Dame student.
Wow.
He's been a Navy fan his whole life. He's probably been to more Navy games than he has Notre Dame games.
Wow.
Yeah, of course, no doubt he was rooting for Notre Dame, as we all do. But you'll never hear the words, except for I'm about to say them right now, beat Navy come out of my mouth. I can't say it. There's always, anytime Notre Dame plays someone, it's, go Irish beat Trojans or go Irish beat whoever.
Yep.
And, there were people out there saying go Irish beat Navy this weekend. And I just can't do it. I will never, ever, ever root against Navy. I will always root for Notre Dame and certainly want them to win. But I was so happy with how the game went yesterday. It was a respectable win for the Irish. There's always, they talk about style points, talk about rankings. It was a solid win. But it wasn't a blowout, and it wasn't disrespectful, I thought, to the Naval Academy. Navy's having a tough year. They've only won 2 games. They've had years in the past where they've been really good, and they've certainly beaten us and given us a challenge. But I thought it was a strong win for the Irish. I thought it was it's a tough year for Navy. But the respect between the two schools is really unmatched. I don't know if you find that in probably any other football rivalry. And I don't know if you'll really even find it in any other collegiate competition. Maybe Army Navy, maybe. But it's just really, it's such a
Yeah,
neat and special game for us.
totally.
And I think one
Yeah.
of the reasons I love it is, all day yesterday and certainly during the game, I get texts from our former midshipmen,
Oh, wow.
hey,
Yeah.
watching the game, hey, checking in, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
thinking of you guys. One of our
Yep.
former mids sent a text that said, ooh, just saw the score, not so good. So I love that too. It's kind of a
Yeah.
connection to
Yeah.
these young men who are now,
Mm.
adults, many of them with,
Yeah.
married with children, and kind of that connection of our
Yeah.
very, very, very small role
Yeah.
at the Naval Academy. So really fun game and day for us. Of course, we're happy the Irish won, but we love our mids as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the beauty of sport is like it does prompt us to think of certain people and reach out to them. And yeah, there's no better feeling when like friends send who are not Notre Dame fans or Giants fans. Yeah, perfect example. Friend of mine at Notre Dame, Holy Cross priest, the night the Giants played the Dodgers in Game 5, cheering for the Giants tonight. Like
Yeah.
love it. Love when friends outside Notre Dame are like, "Hey, great win for the Irish." I mean, it is. It's such a great. But then you're talking about within even that, there's like the connection that you had with these mids and the actual game going on. So it's a great part of sports for sure.
Yes. Yeah,
No doubt
it
about it.
really
Right.
is.
That's awesome. Enjoy it.
Yep. Yes. So my spiritual stew this week comes from today's gospel. And, I say it's one of my favorite readings. I think it's probably just one of the more popular ones. I always liked it when I was younger because it was one I had heard of and remembered. And anytime you're a young person and you're going to church and you actually recognize something, that was always, exciting for me. But this particular gospel reading, has certainly taken on a new, well, it's just changed in meaning for me, I think, as I've
Mm.
aged. And I think that's probably true with a lot of people and a lot of readings. So today's gospel was Mark 12, 41 to 44. And it's the gospel of the widow's mite. And this is, it's the story where you have, wealthy men come into, I guess it would be the synagogue, right?
Yeah, they're in the
Yes,
temple.
in the
Uh-huh.
temple, right?
Yep.
And they drop their large coins. So they're making a large sound. It's very known, because of the sound, everyone knows that they are giving a lot of money or at least a large sum. And then you have the widow who comes in and she offers, these small coins. They're her last two coins. They don't make a large sound. Everyone knows she's giving very little from a monetary standpoint. And Jesus says the words, amen, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the other
Yeah.
contributors to the treasury, for they have all contributed from their surplus wealth, but she from her poverty has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood. So I love this because I really think about it. So you have these men and they give a lot of money. And you know what? That's important. Philanthropy is important. And
Yeah.
it's critical for most organizations, certainly most nonprofits, to have large donors. So,
Yeah.
you really don't want to take anything away from that because that's how the philanthropic world runs. That's how we have many of our churches, the arts, there's so much out there that relies on, philanthropy and those large donors who are giving those big coins, so to speak.
Sure.
But, I always, think of the widow and the woman who gives everything she has. And
Yeah.
what a greater sacrifice that
Mhm.
is to give everything you have and not, a large amount that might be a small, small fraction of your total wealth. Now, is that large amount important? Of course it is. And this is
Yeah.
where I get myself in trouble, right? Because
Yeah.
I find myself being a little judgy sometimes. If you're worth $100 million and you all of a sudden gave 50,000 away, okay, that's a lot of money, $50,000.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not a whole lot compared to what you could have given. But again, who am I to judge what someone could give and what they couldn't? But I think we
Yeah.
can all agree that the widow who gives everything she has is pretty
Yeah.
extraordinary. Um,
Yeah.
and so how do we do that? Not we can't give all of our money away.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to live,
Right.
right? We need to
Yeah.
function. So what does that mean? It means we have to give our whole self.
Yeah.
It means that everything we do, our actions need to be in a way that gives all of us. And I I think
Yeah.
that's what Jesus is saying in this gospel,
Yeah.
or what Mark is saying,
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
Jesus's words is, if we have, if our capacity for giving, whether it's money or love or
Right.
of ourselves, is, you know, you know, tenfold or
Mm.
extraordinary, then giving a little bit isn't enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to really give our whole self. So,
Yeah.
I think it's shared in terms of financial giving, but I think really he means that we need to give all of us,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
ourselves. So,
Yeah. I
so,
know.
I try not to judge. That's one
Yeah.
of the things I am working on constantly. But
Oh gosh,
it makes me
yes. I
think.
know. I know.
This gospel makes me think, and I think that's
Yeah.
what we're called to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm curious like how it has changed for you over time was one question I was thinking. And young people, I think people really get the message of this, gospel. So we understand, but it's like this woman has literally nothing. I mean, she lives in a society where, as a widow, so she's not supposed to be in public as a woman. She's supposed to be in private life. She's lost her inheritance because women, when they're widowed, that's why like we pray for the Anawim. The Anawim are the widow, the orphan, and the immigrant. These are people who have literally no power. They are totally dependent. And that's where you like to think of God as father. So I was thinking of like my mom and I were talking today about a child, how they're so dependent on their parent. And there's like this trust that your parent will pick you up on time and, that they will follow through with things. And this woman, what she shows is her, ability to trust. And I think today, my experience of hearing it for me was different because the first reading, when they talk about Elijah, and there's a widow in that first reading, right? And
Right.
the prophet Elijah, tells this woman about flour and baking a cake, and like that she will never run out of flour, and there will be enough to, feed her, so to speak, and like a jug of oil, and it lasts for like over a year. And so it's just the first reading is usually connected to this gospel. And so you have the prophet Elijah speaking the word before, this Christ who's, obviously the Messiah, and giving a similar message, right? Like these people they have nothing to separate them from God, which is very different than the scribes who study the law. They know the law, that's their life, and it's showy and it's powerful and it's important. That's the other thing I struggle with. Like, they have an important role. I don't want to, if we're going to talk about judging, I don't know enough to know these scribes other than they are flashy and doing their thing. So for them to see her, right, she is suddenly the teacher, which is interesting because it's like, okay, what does that mean in our lives? Like, other than how can we live not in the place of powerlessness, but total dependence on God?
Right.
That one's really hard.
That's a challenge. Yeah. Well, and
I don't know.
You asked, how is this gospel
Yeah.
changed for me? I think it's changed from, what I had sort of mentioned is from a literal standpoint to, of being money, of giving, monetarily, to giving of ourselves. I think that's probably the biggest shift.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's made me any less judgmental. So we'll work on that. I think, that will be one of my takeaways for this week is to, and not even to judge, sometimes I find myself judging why people give, or not just what they give, why are they doing this? Do they want people to recognize them? Are they looking for a pat on the back? And that's not my call either. Giving is giving. But, there's also, sometimes, you even think of like, a parent's love and giving of their love and, the expectations or the parents have in return. And, even getting, gift giving, that's always a hot topic in our house. Do you give something, do you take something back? Do you return something that someone has gifted to you? And if you do, should that bother the person, right?
I know.
And my family's all over the place on this. I tend to feel that if I give you something, I have given it to you and it is yours. and you can do whatever you choose with it. You can throw it away. You can give it away. You can use it for yourself. You could resell it, right? A gift is given, right?
That's right.
The attachment is gone, but
Yep.
oh man almighty,
Yeah.
that is not how
Yeah.
the rest of my family feels. And,
No, I know.
and you get in trouble sometime. And, it is nice. You want to feel like your gift is appreciated. I don't buy things for the sake of buying them. I try to put a lot of thought behind the gifts. So, I would be sorry if someone didn't like what I'd given them, because I would like to think that I had put thought into it. But it's still a gift, right? So,
right. I know. Yeah.
Tricky challenges. Well, we're going to have lots to talk about as we move through the holiday season.
I know. Yes. Yeah. This isn't necessarily spiritual stew, but one of this book that I read, The Four Winds, and the woman has no power. Literally, she is the main character's name is Elsa, and her husband left her. So she's not a widow, but she's a single mother. She has two children, and they flee Texas because it's during the Dust Bowl, and they come to California, and they're working in the fields because that's all they can really do. And they're completely exploited. And she's totally powerless. And I guess what I keep thinking, like, as it relates to our stew, like, and when people find themselves in a situation where they are powerless, right? To me, this woman is saying that she isn't without a choice, even though there's no power. She's able to give in spite of that. And this woman, Elsa, the main character, is totally powerless, but yet she still has her dignity. She still has her beliefs. Like, she doesn't compromise. She's incredibly strong, and that's why she's a hero. So I don't know if you want to call this widow a hero, but in some ways she's saint, spiritual mentor. I don't know, but it's like, even when the chips are down or anything's taken from us, like, what do we hold on to?
Right.
And for people, that's faith, or, again, this woman has her dignity, her respect, her education, her beliefs, like her convictions. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for anybody, regardless of the era, to consider, what do we have?
Right. And I do think, again, not reminding everybody that we are moving into the holidays again, but that gets harder and harder to do, I think, during the holiday season. My husband and I were in a local mom and pop shop this morning, and we were walking through, and they had a lot of Christmas decorations up, very few Thanksgiving things, a lot of Christmas stuff. And I said to him, where this is so commercial. I said, there's no Advent. There was nothing. I think there was literally, and I should have taken a picture of it, a small box that looked like about the size of a matchbox on the counter as you were checking out. And there was just one. And it said, it had 3 words on the front: Jesus, Mary, Joseph. And you opened it like a matchbox, you slid it out, and there was 3 little dolls in there. And that was, in the entire store of all of the Christmas, the only thing that really demonstrated what Christmas is. So, you think of, as I hear you talking about this character in the book, and it is on my to be read list. I think that's what they call it. TBR. To be read book. To be read list. It sounds like she's a character like the widow in the gospel today, who is so strong in her convictions, who's going to give everything she has, who really just has solid values and beliefs. And that is harder and harder to hold on to during this Christmas season. So we really have to be aware of that. So,
I know.
If that's one thing we can take from today's gospel, it's just to look to these characters in the Bible or in a book that you're reading, that really give us this model to hold on to what is truly important, and to remember to give, as we're making those Christmas lists as well.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like, you just challenge our listeners to really look this season, where are you seeing the message of nativity, of the incarnation? I mean, that's, I think, a really great question. Thank you for that observation, because it is so, I mean, if we're going to come back to something, it's really this question of authenticity. And, we want something real. I think that's why the incarnation is so important, because God became very real, right? He became one of us. But it's like we have all this stuff, and we're making something because we're, it's the holidays, but, can it be meaningful? How do people make it meaningful, right, for them? And for some people, it's just about family. For other people, it's about really, the birth of Christ, or, Hanukkah, or, whatever that holiday may be for you. But I think that's a great challenge, as a takeaway to consider. Where are we seeing, right, the meaning of this season, other than a commercial? And it feels good, it does, it looks great. Red and green look great. And I love the music and the baked goods and getting up for it. But it's also like, I'm a little worried, Haley. Like, I'm like, can I do this for 8 weeks? I mean, I'm going to go for it, but like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there might be some real wisdom in keeping it from Thanksgiving Friday, Black Friday, till the end.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think, yes. Yeah, that's a good challenge for us. And it's a good takeaway, as we move through this week, thinking of the widow, thinking of giving. It is the month of Thanksgiving. So we are all thinking of different ways we can give, whether it's food, whether it's dinners, whether it's, I think there was a sock collection and a coat collection I just saw. So people are in the spirit of giving, but what are we really giving? When we give, are we giving like the wealthy people who are dropping in their loud coins that just make a loud noise, but don't, necessarily come from the heart? Or are we giving our last 2 cents, again, metaphorically? I think that's something for us to consider. How much can we give, and can we give more? And, the answer is probably always yes, but do we? And then we need to look at, maybe why we do or why we don't. So those are pretty hefty questions for me to answer as well.
Right. Or, if you really, I was thinking as you're talking, another way to just kind of focus on it is if we took all this stuff away, like all the things that we have away, like what do we have? That's like, this widow has the ability to give, right? That's one thing she has. That's a freedom, like that's a huge freedom. So yeah, if we took all of our gifts and, but again, what would we have? So
right.
Bring it. No.
All right.
So what are your takeaways? Any other takeaways for the week?
So I'm gonna relish in the ordinary. I think, I
like it.
I really am. I think part of, the hype of the holidays is it's a lot, and there's a lot going on, and it gets very busy, and that's exciting and really fun. That we have holiday traditions that I look forward to every year. But I think we also, my goal is going to be to really slow down, this month, or at least certainly this week. I'll take it a day at a time, and just treasure the ordinary, the simplicity of a day, and try to bring, to kind of bring it back to that, to not continue to look forward to those moments that I'm grateful for, but to just be grateful in the moment. I think that'll be my biggest takeaway. And then really keeping an eye or my heart on giving, and what that really means, and what that means for me, in terms of who I want to be like, in terms of my giving. How about you? Takeaways?
Let's see. Okay. So my takeaway this week, well, my students are going to be doing an assignment where they have to take on a personal discipline. So, ideally they would take on a spiritual discipline, but they can do a physical discipline. I've talked about my 21 for 2021, which is reading, but I would like to add the discipline of stretching.
Good for you.
Yeah, every day. So I'm going to give this assignment, and I might tell them that I will engage in the assignment with them, because the 21 for 2021 isn't going away. It's just not. That's good. The stretching is very important. So I might, takeaway would be just to consider, committing to a discipline. And my discipline is, and sharing this with students, obviously creating the assignment. I think it's going to be their final assignment. And, recording it and writing about it. That's part of the discipline thing. So Yeah. And then, this past week I've had just struggling with some classroom issues, and it's just been really challenging. And I think what I need most is, for people who I think whenever we're in a position where we're struggling, it is so important to feel heard and just supported. So it might just be like, I'm sorry that's happening, And so, I have a role where I'm in a power role myself. So the things that I wish I'm getting, I think I would also be intentional about really trying to do. So just really listening to people, especially if they're just kind of like something's happened, but also then, I'm just sorry that happened. That goes a long way. Just for people to recognize that something's been hurt or harmed, and just acknowledging like, hey, that's too bad. So the thing that I'm hoping that I wish I would have felt, I would like to extend to others. So maybe that's something for our listeners, something that you feel in your own life that maybe you wish for, you can work on, giving to other people.
Awesome. I think that sounds great. And I look forward to hearing how it's going.
It'll be very Advent-like. So
that's okay. We could start Advent early. That we could do for 8 weeks.
There you go. Just in our continued extended holiday theme. Advent is now 8 weeks.
Exactly. Just won't be able to find it in the store I was shopping in this morning.
I know. Well, I'm glad you're supporting that store.
Yes.
I'm sure you were intentional about that. So
All right. Well, Anne, have a great week. I look forward to catching up next week, and have a great week to our listeners. Thanks.